Carl Hopkins.
Here.
Bruce Miller.
Here.
Craig Arcuri. Dolores Johnson. Karen Kahn.
Here.
Kirk Martin.
Here.
Jim Wilson.
Now we will do public comment. We have a speaker here, Paul Bowen. Will make some comments on the Collins Foundation.
Good evening. I just thought I'd step forward to, first off, make sure it got on the record that having the Collins Foundation coming to our airport, I think was a major, really good thing. It's a fantastic opportunity for the airport to build a lot of goodwill in the community. For those of you who may not know, I actually park where the Collins Foundation parks, and I will be very happy to move my airplane again next year if we're lucky to get them back. I think the north side of the airfield is a much better venue for them. There's much more parking. It draws a huge crowd if some of you came by and saw it. Kudos go to Above All Aviation for what they did to help out make it happen. And also to Signature for doing all the work on the ramp space and giving me another place to park when I need to get out of their way. So, and I'm sure airport staff did a lot too. I saw very good signage up for it. So, amazing, good event. We want to see them come back. But, here's always the but, we need to learn from our mistakes. So, I'm not going to go launching into a bunch of bad, this, that, or the other. But there were things that hopefully we will do better next year. And some of them are very good positive ones that I will mention. I think it's a great opportunity for the airport to kind of wave its own flag. So, we saw hundreds and hundreds of people come there, but at least when I was there, I didn't see anything from the airport saying, fly SBA or, any of those things. So this is a great opportunity for us to build on it. I went and took the liberty of speaking with many of the tenants in the area, and there are some ruffled feathers, myself included at one point. But I think with learning from it, we'll get better and better at it. And I want to thank everybody that worked so hard and gave up to make it happen.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also would like to make a public comment. I'll make it from here. Last Saturday, the 16th of May, was Airport Day at Santa Ynez. And amongst a variety of other activities, the Experimental Aircraft Association Chapter 527 here in Santa Barbara flew Young Eagles over there. And we flew a total of 88 Young Eagles. These are kids age 8 but not yet 18, giving them their usually first airplane ride. Almost all of the ones that I flew it was the first time they'd been in any airplane, and all of them had never been in a light plane before. It's free for them. They get a nice certificate, they get a logbook, and they get a free ground school class from Sporties.com. Although it was done in Santa Ynez, it was principally the Santa Barbara chapter and Above All Aviation. I'd like to thank them again. They provided 3 planes and 6 pilots. In addition to that, this summer, the Chapter 527 is planning an event here in Santa Barbara, a similar, much smaller event here in Santa Barbara. So if anyone is listening and has a child age 8 but not yet 18 who's interested, they can send an email to eaa527@cox.net.
Very good. We'll post that on our website too.
Oh,
We can do
thank
that.
you. The date is sometime this summer, but not yet determined.
Okay.
TBD.
Are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Not working?
It wasn't.
You have to turn it on.
Some of them you can push.
Okay. Minutes. Our notices first here, that the Monday, April 20th at 3 o'clock, the General Aviation Subcommittee met in the Airport Administration Building. And on Monday, April 27th at 4 p.m., the Lease Review Subcommittee met in the Airport Administration Building. And then on Friday, May 15th at 5:30, the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at the Airport Administration. Next item is the minutes. Recommendation is that the Airport Commission waive the reading and approve the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, April 15th.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes, all in favor. The consent calendar, we have a number of leases. We have the amendment to the solar photovoltaic system. We have the Integrated Pest Management Annual Report and the Property Management Report. If there are no questions, is there a recommendation to approve?
I move we consider the consent calendar and approve it as presented.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Consent calendar has been approved. Liaison reports. I see our Goleta Councilman Michael Bennett here. Do you have anything to say to us today, sir?
Just here to answer questions, nothing to report.
Okay, and next comes some administrative reports, a master plan update, traffic study.
Yes, we are continuing to compile our environmental document, and we will have Andrew Vermont, our airport planner, give an update on the environmental documentation and our schedule. So, Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners and Hazel. I'm back before you to give you an update on how we're doing in the airport master plan process, specifically the environmental review. I'm going to go over once again our airport master plan timeline and the CEQA process, just as a short review. And then I'll discuss sort of the issue of the day for airport staff, which is the traffic analysis and some revisions that we have to make to that. And then I'll talk about the updated schedule for the airport master plan project and what our next steps are. So as you've seen before, this is a number of times before, I'm sure. This is our airport master plan process timeline, and we're down here almost at the end doing the CEQA review. And of course, as I've mentioned before, the CEQA process is actually its own multifaceted flowchart. And we're just past halfway, but this is the preparation of the EIR phase, is kind of a time-intensive one. As I mentioned last year, the airport staff and with community development staff prepared an initial study where we looked at all 17 issue areas as required by CEQA. And we narrowed the EIR down to only focusing those that are potentially significant environmental impacts would result from the airport master plan. 6 months ago, I came before you to discuss the cultural resources section, and today we'll talk about the transportation section. I'm not going to go over every single one of these sections, though we will do that when we have the public draft EIR. That will be back here in a couple months, and we'll talk about all of the impact levels. So our traffic study, we apply some unique methods for the city of Santa Barbara. The Plan Santa Barbara in 2011 was adopted. That's the city of Santa Barbara's general plan, and it gives an entirely separate process for the airport than the rest of the city proper. That's in recognition of the fact that traffic demand that the airport generates occurs in other jurisdictions. It doesn't occur within the city of Santa Barbara so much. And so we have obligated ourselves to applying the City of Goleta's traffic model and standards in consultation with City of Goleta staff so that we make sure that any traffic impacts that are generated by the airport mitigates as it would if it were in the City of Goleta. There's the City of Santa Barbara traffic management strategy has defined specifically what a significant impact is, both project specific and cumulative, and that's volume to capacity ratio exceeding 77%, let's say. So that's if an intersection after you install the project is functioning at a C- or worse, to use the level of service standards. And then if there's if you have an intersection that's already doing that and your project contributes a 1% increase, then that's a cumulative impact. So that's slightly different than what the City of Goleta standards are, but it's again sort of a recognition that increased congestion is a problem. So we also review the county environmental thresholds because those apply in county jurisdiction, and they've also been adopted by the city of Goleta, so it's the same standard for those two jurisdictions. And although that's not specifically how we define an environmental impact, we also compare that to make sure that we're not saying it's not a problem when another jurisdiction would say it is a problem. And then to convolute things even further, we also have to address Senate Bill 743, which was passed 2 years ago, which changes the way traffic analyses are supposed to be done. That's not yet been finalized through the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, so we don't have a standard to apply for vehicle miles traveled instead of levels of service, but we still have to address it under the law. So we'll discuss it, but that's not how we're defining an environmental impact for this document. So this is our study area, which I think is a little intuitive. It's the road network around the airport. We identified the intersections, the signalized intersections where we have the greatest contribution. We've identified a couple others in consultation with Goleta staff that we are incorporating now, but this is the work that we've already completed. And we forecast out for this year, 2017, 2022, and 2032. We use those years because those are the years that we model for short, medium, and long term in the other sections of the EIR, so that for the document to be consistent throughout, we're modeling for those years. And we try to estimate for those years what infrastructure will be available. That's pretty easy to do for today, but as you look forward, will there be new lanes? Will there be a different road system? It's a little bit of a guessing game. We also try to anticipate what the future demand from the airport is. That's the purpose of the airport master plan, of course, so that's a little bit easier to do. And then the demand from the surrounding area. We look at the UCSB LRDP, the City of Goleta general plan, pending projects that are in review either at the county or the City of Goleta. And then again, it's sort of a guessing game as to how much traffic each of those projects will ultimately contribute. The result of that process that we did last fall was we found that congestion would occur in 3 locations where US 101 and Los Carneros, US 101 and Fairview, and also Fairview and Cayo Real in the medium or long-term years there. But we found that if you exclude the changes to the traffic mix that would come from the master plan, then all of those impacts occur anyway. And the airport master plan's contributions did not trigger in any one of those intersections a 1% increase at a peak for a peak hour trip. So we've concluded that although there's a potential for a significant environmental impact, the analysis doesn't find that. However, in compliance with the general plan, we shared this traffic study with Goleta staff, and Goleta staff gave us a comment letter which identified a few things that were frankly very good comments, one of which was that we had done our counts in July, and that doesn't accurately model UCSB traffic. And so based on that alone, we needed to go out and do additional traffic counts. They also wanted us to look at Kellogg Avenue, so we incorporated that. And they also didn't feel that FBOs, I think it was really that FBOs are sort of a unique use. They don't really model that well with a commercial in the ITE manual. So we did specific counts at the parking lots of the FBOs so that we can demonstrate more refinement as to what actually the traffic demand is for those. And then again, that's a kind of an awkward situation because what we're trying to do is peak hour travel. FBOs don't necessarily use the same peak hour travel as commuters, so that's a little bit of an art to compare those numbers to the ITE manual, but we've incorporated that just to be thorough. So from here, we're wrapping up the revision of the traffic study. That's essentially done. We need to incorporate those revisions into the draft document before we can make that public, of course. We're looking at having that available as a public review document in July. We'll bring that to Airport Commission again to give commissioners and the public an opportunity to comment. There will also be a public comment hearing at Planning Commission downtown. And then we anticipate that in fall, around October, we will have a final EIR for certification, and then with a certified EIR, you can adopt the master plan, or city council can rather. So that's where we are now. I'll be happy to answer questions if you have them.
I have a question. Is the traffic count based on the seemingly somewhat optimistic count of the draft EIR out into the future?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Wilson, yes, it uses the forecast that was in the master plan. So it's reasonable to then imagine that perhaps, at least in the short term, the projected impacts will actually be lower. But we're, again, to be conservative and to be consistent throughout the entire process, we're using the same forecast.
Yeah, it would seem conservative.
When you did the new count, not in July, allowing for UCSP traffic and Goleta Valley schools and that sort of thing, did you notice any change in the formula, or was it different numbers but no real change?
Commissioner Martin, that's, I don't have all of the counts in yet, so I can't really make a thorough analysis. I would say that mostly the difference that we see between July and the April counts were with respect to the construction along 101. And so we'll again have to compare those two and sort of create a hybrid to reasonably account for traffic on, especially because those are our impacted or potentially impacted intersections in the future. Los Carneros and Fairview at 101. So I haven't looked at what all of the intersections, especially Los Carneros, which I think is the one that's probably the most interesting for UCSB in particular. I have not looked at those yet.
And the reason I asked the question was because I would almost think that your traffic time periods are not the same as you noted, the changes from the normal commuter traffic, the school traffic are different timeframes. So I was curious if it was impacted or if they were at, different times and it didn't really have as significant of an impact.
Yeah, that the terminal, for example, we identified its PM peak hour period as 1 in the afternoon, which is completely out of alignment with the rest of Goleta. That's to the airport's benefit because those peak hour contributions are occurring off schedule. So the FBOs, I think, we'll find are the same way. They don't quite line up so well, and frankly, what we define as the peak hour will be kind of arbitrary depending on who is flying that day.
Interesting numbers. Thank you.
I was wondering if our City of Goleta liaison had any comments on, or feedback on the process, and if any of the staff's questions have been addressed adequately.
Well said. That's where we have staff. Staff
deals Okay. with Okay, let's comment itself.
I have a question that's, if nobody else, that's not concerning the traffic, but is concerning the master plan. And over the last week or so, I was looking at it and thinking about the issue that you spoke to us before on the cultural area, specifically the hangars. And my concern is that a major portion of that master plan was general aviation. And the general idea was that the northeast side of the field would be for the heavy iron, and the northwest side of the field would be for the smaller general aviation. And the plan was written with the assumption that hangars, actually originally with 1, 2, and 3, would be torn down. And their space utilized for other things. when the EIR was done, those hangars were listed as a, if I recall right, a potential structure of merit, which is the lowest of the categories for such structures. However, if it is so designated and there's no override by the city council, then it's my understanding that they would have to remain. And my concern is if 2 years ago, whenever it was that we were actually all in this room working on that master plan, we had been told that those hangars had to stay, we would have very likely come up with a potentially significantly different master plan for at least the northwest part of the field. That the Hangar 1 significantly impacts on the proposed transient aircraft parking space and maintenance, little self-maintenance facility and self-wash rack. And Hangar 2 probably makes it impossible to produce a set of T-hangars or to build out in the future a set of T-hangars because that was supposed to be an access point for those. Hangar 3, which there's been some discussion of keeping anyways, I think in the, and blocking it out of the FBOs, certainly isn't desirable. I don't think any of the FBOs are going to jump at the idea of keeping this wonderful hangar and finding wonderful uses for it. So the question that I have is, can we go to the council ahead of time and find out whether or not they're going to allow any of those hangars to be removed? And because if they are, then we can proceed with the existing plan. If the answer is no, I would want to go back and revisit some potentially significant portions of the master plan. If they have to stay there, then what are we going to do? And I don't think, oh, well, we'll just sort of live with it is a very good plan. So how can that be addressed?
I'll have Andrew address the procedure for having council do an overriding consideration. But do keep in mind that the master plan had blobs of space identified under alternatives. There were really no specific concept drawings for the use of that area. I agree that keeping the 3 World War II hangars changes the concept that we might come up with. But we don't have anything in the master plan that's concrete. It's all fluid. And when we do the solicitation for FBO RFPs and for new facilities, then it'll be a challenge for the FBOs to look at all of the space that's available and come up with appropriate types of layout that meets our needs as well as their customers' needs. But on to the
Could I just point out
environmental.
too that also on this, I respect your wanting to get into this a little more, but we should be aware that we really can't be having a discussion on this here because that would pretty much exceed the scope of this agenda item, so, which is specifically long-term traffic analysis
Master
aspects
plan.
of the master plan. So.
Within the context of updating the commission on the status of the airport master plan, I'll simply say
Yes.
that a number of different alternatives are included in the EIR for the airport master plan. It looks at the proposed project, which includes the demolition of the hangars, and a few other reasonably applicable alternatives. By law, one is always the no project alternative. What if we didn't adopt the master plan? What would be the consequence? And also by law, we have to identify which of the alternatives is the environmentally superior alternative. And in the case of this document that we will put forward as a public draft in 2 months, we've identified the environmentally superior alternative as the one that retains the hangars and does not fully extend Taxiway Hotel. So we will look at the various alternatives, and between Planning Commission and City Council, there can be some column A, column B selection in what they consider to be the preferred approach. But that's the, that's the CEQA process that we go through with the master plan. And so we can adopt portions of the master plan and not others at City Council's discretion.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you. Well presented.
Yes. And I think that brings us to our next item, which is the airline rates and charges for the fiscal year. Is there a presentation or,
Yes.
okay? Thought so.
Sure. Thank you. As you all know, the airlines operate here in Santa Barbara on an annual operating permit, not a lease agreement per se. And each year we establish the rates for the airline terminal and also landing fees, boarding bridge, and most recently, the fuel flowage fee. These agreements also address issues with security and operational requirements that are imposed by TSA through the airport and the airlines. And generally, it just indicates that they will obey the TSA requirements. They'll do background checks on their own employees and send them over to us already verified so that we can do their badges, and that we'll audit the media and also maintain security for all the persons that they're responsible for. We have had, as you well know, air service changes. Recently, we have a projection of a decrease in the number of seats that are projected for fiscal year 16. We lost Frontier in January. Part of that loss, that was a large aircraft, A319, and part of that loss will be offset by the second flight that Alaska will institute June 7th to Seattle. The decreases over the years, we've had a 7% decrease in 2014. Overall load factor is 78.3%, and that's a blend, obviously, of all the airlines. Los Angeles has the lightest load factor. San Francisco, Denver, and Phoenix, and Seattle and Portland have higher load factors. You can see that the carrier consolidation, we had 6 carriers in 2008, and we have 3 carriers today with 6 nonstops. When we put together the schedule that we use, the spreadsheet to negotiate with the airlines, we do it based on allocating our total operating budget by category, and it includes all of our direct and indirect expenses. It also includes the debt service for the terminal, which is pledged through our operating revenues as well as our passenger facility charges. And it also has deposits to our mandatory reserve funds, the difference between what we have and what we need to keep it at 25% based on council policy and our budget amount. So when we allocate, 30% of our costs go to the airfield. Terminal building is 55%, and we've increased that over the years just based on our actual experience once we got into the new terminal. The boarding bridge, the airlines asked that that be a separate cost center entirely because not all airlines use the boarding bridge, and therefore only those who use will pay for it. Commercial industrial, our costs are 10%, and then we have parking and other facilities for the other. So in this, our calculation is that we look at what our terminal building costs total. In this case, it was $9.5 million. But it's a residual agreement, so the airlines get the benefit of all of the revenues that the airport generates. So in this particular case, we offset that cost with rental car revenue and concession. Those are the other 2 main users in the terminal. So we reduce the airline's costs by that, coming down to $7.2 million. We divide that total by the total building square feet of 67,586 and come up with a cost per square foot of $107. That's a significant increase this year for the airlines, and in our negotiations, we agreed to $99 per square foot. So we would generate $2.3 million in building rental. The boarding bridge is even easier because we look at the maintenance cost, we look at our debt service on the boarding bridge for a total of $247,000. We divide that cost by the number of projected turns anytime that the airlines use it. And with the increase, with United going to more regional jets, we have an increase in the number of turns that will be available for those 3 boarding bridges. So when you divide the projected number of turns into the cost, it comes out to $43 per turn, which is 200. It recoups the total dollar amount that we're after. Then the very last one is the landing fees, and that's where you sort of dump everything else into the calculation. So we take our total cost of $16.7 million, reduce out all of the revenues from commercial and industrial revenue, all of the non-airline revenues, and we even pick up the proposed building space rental that the airlines are going to pay, the 2.3, the loading bridge of $247,000, as well as the fuel flowage fee, which is 4 cents per gallon of fuel sold to the airlines. So then you come down to your net of $2.5 million for the landing fee requirement. That's the goal for us to achieve. Then that amount is divided by the projected landed weight of the aircraft. And in this case, that's 410, actually million or more pounds, but it's done by 1,000 pounds. So the calculated landing fee would be $6.31. That was twice what we currently have. So we negotiated an increase to $3.70. So we will generate I don't think we're going to, whatever, I guess we get $2.5 million.
Could we go back to that? I was a little confused because you say the landing fee requirement was 2.5 million. You've
So-
projected a rate that's
Not that.
not quite half of what it would have required to get there, but then you say airline revenue from landing fees is 2.5 million. So how did that math work?
I didn't actually do this. Let me check on it, and I'll
Okay.
get you. I see Rebecca back there. Okay, but I will come back with that. Once again, it's the negotiations are based. We distribute the information based on our projected budget. We had 2 meetings with the airlines in January and February, and then the agreements would be effective July 1st. The increases, currently building rate is $94, going to $99. Boarding bridge fee is $90, and that's because we lost American. And when they pulled their flights out, the number of turns on the boarding bridges dropped significantly. So that's why the rate went up last year. Landing fee currently is $3.52, going to $3.70, and then fuel flowage fee remains at 4 cents. Generally, we're asked, how does Santa Barbara's rates compare to other airports? And the way that's measured is the cost per in-plane passenger for the airlines. And the airlines take the cost that they pay to an airport and divide it by their enplanements. And that ratio will decrease when you have increased passengers. It increases when you have fewer passengers. And our costs, by and large, the costs at the airport have increased maybe 5% per year overall. But when you lose the traffic that we've lost, then our rate goes up for cost per in-plane passenger. When we did the bond issue back in 2009 with substantially more enplanements, our rate was $8.95. In 2014, it was $10.81, and projecting $13 for 15. And then even higher at $13.38 for 2016. This is a chart that list all of the airports in California that are certificated, all of the Part 139 airports, starting with Santa Maria. And you'll notice that Santa Barbara is fifth from the end as far as cost per in-plane passengers being on the higher end. That's not where we'd like to be. So tonight, we're asking Commission to recommend to City Council the new rates of $99 per square foot for the building rental, $43 for boarding bridge fee, $3.70 for landing fees, and 4 cents per gallon of fuel sold. The airlines also have requested, and this is the second year that they have done so, that should an airline not sign the agreement within 90 days upon receipt, then they're subject to having the rates go up 25%. And especially if there's, hopefully that won't happen, but they asked for that to be included, and we did. And I will get you, Commissioner Miller, the spreadsheet. And I believe that number is, as you indicated, was incorrect, because it is substantially higher than $2.5 million for landing fees.
The 2.5 was the required revenue from landing fees. It was basically what was left over after you took your costs and.
And then what are
back.
we actually getting?
Right.
Right.
So,
I don't know.
again, that rate that you showed was just a little over half of that. So I would expect that the actual derived revenue would be just half of that requirement for the 2.5 million. So that leaves you with $1 million
$1 million
something
short.
And so we don't have this in kind of the context of the overall budget, which we looked at, I think it was last month. Were these rates put into that at that
Yes.
time?
When we submitted our budget this year, we had already calculated these rates to be a part of that document, because we'd had the meetings with the airlines and had full discussion with them. And then we showed the calculations. We had gone in with a 10% request and didn't achieve that in our negotiations, and then listed these dollar amounts in the budget.
Okay, so the budget we've seen had these rates. These rates have been approved by the airlines, or have been negotiated with the airlines, and then these rates are in effect for, for 1 year?
Yes, that's correct. July 1st through
Right.
June 30th. Yes.
And we're still wrestling with the how to address the shortfall with downtown and so forth.
Yes, we are. We're still, there'll be another City Finance Committee next week, and we'll be, it's a special meeting, we'll be discussing the airport's budget once again.
Okay.
Just for the general information for the general public, you'd indicated that our rates are not where we want them to be, and that is dependent primarily on seats. Correct?
Seats, and then passengers, yes.
And do you anticipate, or do you have any reason to believe that there would be a change in that going forward?
Not at this time.
Okay, that's what I thought. And oftentimes I ask questions I know the answer to, but I'm trying to make it clear for those who, the viewing public.
Thank you.
I think you said it was $3.70 per 1,000 pound. Does that not also apply to anything over 10,000 pounds?
Yes, it does. Yes.
So I'm wondering if part of that apparent discrepancy there of the rate, do those estimates, you talked about commercial airlines, but do those estimates also include all of the non-commercial, general aviation, cargo, et cetera, in those numbers?
When we do the calculation, yes, it does. In the budget, it does. In the airline's commercial rate, we always include cargo. We don't include general aviation. That's a separate line item, but we do include in the landed weights for the airlines, we include the cargo. So in our overall budget, the increase in landing fees for general aviation, or the greater than 10,000 pounds, is included. The increase would be included.
So when you calculated that the actual rate should be $6 and something, and but you're charging $3.70, therefore apparently not generating $1 million something dollars, that some of that million would be offset by the non-cargo, non-commercial jet traffic in here.
No, actually, the $1 million will be a reduction in the airport's budget. Either we need to look for reduction in the budget, either through our capital program or other ways of reducing the budget or increasing our revenues, hopefully in the future in a different manner. Because when we do that last slide, that's everything that's in the budget. It's a total operating budget and every revenue source that we have, including the adjustments to the airline's building rental and boarding bridge fees.
Okay? Any other questions?
Well, on that same topic then, so this approval is for the airline rates. Is there also subsequent change for the GA rates, basically that the FBOs then administer?
That agreement that we executed several years ago when we established that GA landing fee allows the airport director to adjust it every July 1st upon notification, 30 days notice, and it's based on the same rate that's charged to the commercial airlines.
Okay, so has the FBOs have they been engaged in any dialogue on that? They're aware of?
I don't believe we have, yes.
Understood. Okay.
Okay, the item is that we recommend for the approval of these rates. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moved, seconded, and approved. And that brings us to the director's report.
Director's report, yes. Under our marketing program, I believe you have on your desk the Thanks Again program. Lynn Houston's worked very closely with the consultant on this. It's really simple. You go online and you register whichever credit card you'd like or that you typically use when you travel. And when you go through Santa Barbara Airport, if you use that credit card, then you generate points, and you designate whether it's going to be for airline points or hotel points. And it's no cost to you, and all you do is just designate. And if you do that, then as you use your credit card here in Santa Barbara Airport, you will get points for future travel on tickets or hotel accommodations. It's a good program. She's really been pushing it, and I know that the day that they started and we're training our ambassadors to discuss it, as well as other staff at the terminal, I think she told me they had like 2,300 people sign up, which is great. It shocked me that so many people would do it so quickly. But if you're a frequent traveler and you're always looking for a way to get points for seats, it's an easy way to do that. And granted, it is at other airports, so it's not just Santa Barbara. Seattle has it, San Francisco has it, back east has it. So you do it at any airport that you go to that has a Thanks Again program, and buy food or a cup of coffee and you get points. So it is a good program overall. The other item I wanted to mention was the release of the DVDs and or Blu-ray, is that right, Blu-ray? Yes, disc, and we want Airport Commission to have your choice of whichever one you'd like of our aviation history that Tony created for us. And one other item, the advisory group meeting, the workshop, you all received notification of that from the mayor's office, I believe. That's on Thursday, June 4, at 4:30 to 6 p.m. at Cabrillo Pavilion Arts Center. in Ariel, Cologne, the city attorney will be discussing the Brown Act, which is, the way Ariel presents it's kind of interesting and can be exciting. The passenger
I'm sorry.
traffic,
I missed that. What-
exciting.
Thank you, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Two words, two phrases not usually used.
If you violate it, it's even more exciting. This month, April's employments, we just passed because we're no longer having that loss with American. So now we're getting back to where we can really show whether we have growth or not. So compared to March, where we had a 20% decrease in passengers, for the month of April, we're down 1.6%. So I think we turned the corner, I hope, and can start building that back up again. I believe that's all I have, unless you have other questions of me.
Question?
Just to comment on the DVD, in a recommendation that it, I believe it's going to be given away and not sold. Is that correct?
I was unaware. I mean,
Sorry.
I didn't know
not
that
to-
question. I'm sorry.
not to- And just wanted to make a recommendation that we give consideration to a possible donation for it rather than given away. Donation being contributed to the Community Arts Forum or one of the things that we are doing in joint venture at the airport.
Mhm,
So all may benefit.
mhm. Good suggestion.
The other thing we might want to do is make it available for sale through the gift shop with some,
We can't with copyright infringement.
well, maybe someone would like to offer a portion of it for a donation, and if they'd like wider release, that strikes me as a very interesting place. Or have it running just on a continuous loop at the airport so passengers can see it.
We do have that, Commissioner Khan, in the historic terminal, the Ovington. That was one of the reasons it was put together, to tie in to in the rotunda area. So there's a screen, both ADA accessible, and it has each one of the chapters, and you just push the button and it brings it up.
Is there anything in the main terminal, though, to let people know that that's what's running, and maybe if they have some time, they ought to mosey over there?
I don't believe we do at this point, but the ambassadors are aware of it, and I'm sure that Visit Santa Barbara staff is also aware of it. Mhm. As you
Anything
know,
else?
most people are on their way upstairs.
It'd be nice to have
Meters and
running
greeters.
upstairs.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Then we are adjourned.